Welcome back. I'm Dr. Margaret. After the events that I talked about in the last video had happened, I got curious. I began looking for what was out there in the popular literature about perfectionism and depression. I found Brené Brown's work, beginning with The Gifts of Imperfection, where she also discusses the problem with shame that so many people have. You may know her work, which now ranges from Netflix specials to high-grossing TED Talks to leadership trainings. She's everywhere, including here on YouTube. And then there was Terrence Real's book, I Don't Want to Talk About It, a fantastic book about what he termed covert depression in men. But neither of them, to my knowledge, made the next step, the step toward the idea that perfectionism wasn't just a problem by itself. It could act as camouflage for underlying despair and loneliness, feelings that were the products of much earlier childhood or even early adult trauma, but that were tightly stowed away in the far corners of a person's psyche and hidden so adeptly and automatically or unconsciously that the individual themselves might not be totally aware of their presence. Added to the problem was that this very perfectionism, or need to seem perfect to others, might be greatly endangering someone's honesty or transparency about how they were really doing. They'd easily say, "I'm doing fine," when underneath the surface, there was sadness, there was anger, there was loneliness, and perhaps those feelings were beginning to seep into their awareness. Now, before you think I somehow came up with what exactly perfectly hidden depression, or PHD, is all by myself, let me continue with the story of what I began to do. I began writing about my observations and my thoughts about perfectly hidden depression on my own website. And as I did, I asked for feedback from readers about their own experience. Basically, if they identified with this camouflage of perfectionism, would they email me and agree to an interview? In 3 months, over 90 people had emailed me from all over the world. I filtered out some of them for different reasons, but within a year, I conducted over 60 interviews with these folks, and I learned so very much. What kind of background trauma had they had? What childhood abuse had they experienced? What led them to constantly need to meet or exceed the expectations of others? Now, who were these folks? One was a brain surgeon, another a grad student, a motivational speaker, a daughter who'd followed her dad into business, a son whose brilliant success was never enough. Multiple ethnicities, multiple backgrounds. Many were out in their garages or locked in their offices, whispering their story to me. But then I started reading what the academic researchers were saying, and wow, it was right there. Something called destructive perfectionism was on the rise. Socially prescribed perfectionism, where your focus is on meeting the needs of others, with the problem becoming, the more I do, the more I have to do. This socially prescribed perfectionism was significantly linked with an increase in depression and even suicidal thinking. And these researchers were shouting from the rooftops about these dangers. And who was listening? Only other academic researchers. I often ask my clients, if you believe something should exist and it doesn't, why not risk creating it? So that's what I did. 5 years later, and after much swearing and sweating and wish I'd never tried to write a book, Perfectly Hidden Depression was published. And you won't believe what happened next. Thanks so much for being here.